Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about the season 3 finale of the Orville, which could be the series finale, although I hope not. It was called Future Unknown, and as it starts, we see Isaac going about the ship, doing various things, and bringing the doctor a banana while a jaunty song plays. The Orville apparently is heading to a planet where apparently Bortus and Clyden will engage in a vow renewal that involves an all but nude Bortus hunting an equally scantily clad Clyden through the woods, and then once Clyden is caught, the two of them getting down. After a raucous chase which involved Clyden nailing Bortus with a large boulder, Clyden is in fact caught and there occurs a getting down, after which they return to the group having renewed their vows and everyone claps. It was kind of crazy. Isaac then approaches Claire in the mess hall and asks her to marry him, down on one knee and everything with the ring in a box and the whole deal. Claire's a bit annoyed at him though for doing it publicly and explains that he partly did it because he learned that people usually do that if they're going to before they get infirm, which she also found annoying, because he's suggesting that she could be close to that stage of life when she isn't. But he scores points by saying that even once she does pass away, he would look after her descendants. She then has a conversation with Kelly and Kiali about the whole thing, and they toss around some pros and cons of her marrying him, during which Claire says she's certain that Isaac loves her because of what happened that brief time that he had emotions, and she says she loves him too, which I totally do not get. Like, okay, he's handsome enough in his human guise, and apparently he's capable of engaging in romantical activities, and I guess he has other qualities, but like, how do you fall in love with a person that's emotionless? And I don't understand that. And it didn't work on Star Trek, and it didn't work for them the first time either, so it's kind of dumb. Anyway, when the captain shows up during this conversation for some duty-related reason, the ladies ask him for his thoughts on the subject, and he says Claire should ask her kids. So now the Orville is on its way to Sargus 4, that popularity planet from a previous season where people basically lived or died in terms of their social position and whatnot, based on the popularity of things that they do, where they were judged for every single act and rated. And on their way there, they get a signal from Lysilla, I think that's her name, who they met while they were there before. And she asked them to pick her up and grant her asylum because she can't take living on that planet anymore. So apparently she managed to hang on to one of their comm scanners and she signals them while they're near the planet, and they were going there anyway, so they pick her up and take her on the ship. It's kind of weird. They never tell you why they're going there, like that I noticed. So we don't know why they were going there. And then coincidentally, she happens to signal for them at the time that they happen to be approaching. It was a little too convenient. Anyway, when the subject of Isaac's possible upcoming wedding comes up among Lamar and Gordon and a couple of the other crew members, Lamar tells Isaac, who happens to walk in on the conversation, that he thinks Isaac is jumping into marriage without ever having been with anyone else, and that he should remedy that before he marries anyone. Claire then does have a talk with her boys, who tell her that they fully support her if she wants to marry Isaac, before telling Isaac that she accepts his proposal. Isaac says he will make the necessary arrangements, but then goes to ask Kelly to sleep with him. Kelly and the asylum-seeking lady have a conversation about why people bother to work in a society where they don't have to, and she explains that work is its own reward, and that even people who don't work contribute to society in other ways, and no, they don't get bored, they do research for their own edification, they engage in their hobbies, and so forth. Kelly then visits Claire in sickbay to tell her about Isaac, while she's treating an alien with 3 mouths and 3 tongues. It was kind of funny. Claire then asks her to be her maid of honor, though, before Kelly could tell her about Isaac, and she says yes. But then, of course, she does tell her, and Claire flips out on Isaac. And then Lamar, whom she threatens to eat for breakfast with a glass of grapefruit juice if he ever gives Isaac advice again. Kelly then takes the new lady to their version of the holodeck to show her a crazy planet that makes her jaw drop when she asks what people actually do for entertainment. When Isaac asks Gordon to be his best man because he's read that the best man should be someone who is funny, Gordon is pleased, but then challenged by Bortus, who says that he can also be funny, which everybody thinks is itself funny because he's not known for being funny. But he convinces Isaac that it should be him. Isaac invites the entirety of Kaelon society to attend the wedding, and Kaelon Primary says that aside from a small security force that he's going to leave behind on the planet, they will in fact go, even though he totally doesn't understand the concept of marriage. Kelly and the asylum-seeking lady talk about how she feels a little bit like she abandoned her world for a place where everything's perfect. And Kelly explains that her planet can still change and grow if ever they realize that they're all in it together, before inviting her to be part of the bachelorette party. Gordon expresses more than a bit of unhappiness about what Bortus did and says he's even more upset about it than the Kaelon invasion of Earth, but then he seems to have a change of mood when his sandwich from 3 months ago shows up. If you remember in a previous episode, he beams a sandwich into the future, and everybody knew it was going to show up later at some point, and there it was, so it was funny. The asylum-seeking lady then asks Kelly and Kayali why they can't just share their technology with her world and help everybody out, and Kelly basically explains the concept behind their version of the Prime Directive, which the asylum-seeking lady doesn't really seem to understand. The guys attend a bachelor party at which Bortus, as the best man, is responsible for the entertainment, and he comes out on stage dressed as Elvis, much to the delight of Kaliden. But before he starts his performance in earnest, we switch over to the bachelorette party where Isaac begins a crazy striptease type dance, which is actually pretty good. He even ejects tassels from his chest plate. Of course, these scenes are both taking place on the environmental simulator. Claire then joins in on stage with Isaac, and it gets kind of raunchy, which, again, I don't understand. We then get back to the bachelor party where Bortus's Elvis routine is not going great because he's a horrible Elvis. The asylum-seeking lady tells Kelly that she wants to go home because she feels guilty for having escaped. Kelly tells the captain that she wants to go back, and they talk a little bit about whether or not they can actually take her back now that she's seen so much. And Kelly convinces the captain that she can't really further contaminate her planet because no one would believe anything she said anyway, and she's not capable of building anything that she saw. But they then catch her stealing a comm scanner with all the schematics on it for the tech that she would like to give her planet and prevent her from going back. So Kelly takes her to the environmental simulator to show her what happened to a planet which was a lot like her planet and which was a lot like Earth is now, and shows her how it wiped itself out in the span of 5 years after the early Union explorers unthinkingly gave them their advanced technology, thinking they were helping, which the rich and the powerful tried to exploit for themselves and kept from the other people. And she explains that the lady can't pull her people into the future because they're not ready. Isaac's wedding guests arrive with about 4,000 ships, and it turns out that Isaac didn't tell anyone they were coming, which alarms the crap out of everybody. At the wedding ceremony, with the crew in their very snazzy dress uniforms, which reminded me a whole lot of the Monster Maroons in their design, Isaac awaits Claire at the altar in his human guise. The captain begins the wedding ceremony in a similar way to how Kirk begins the wedding ceremony in the Star Trek episode Balance of Terror. I think that was the deliberate homage. Isaac and Claire exchange vows, and even Isaac's were pretty good, even though they were, of course, robotic. And then they are pronounced man and wife, which is funny because it should have been robot and wife, but there you go. At the reception, it turns out that the captain had invited original security lady, Alara, and it was great to see her. I loved that character. I wish she'd never left the show, but she shows up, and it was cool. Bortus starts to give his toast, which is just a series of frank observations of a negative nature, which he thinks are jokes and gentle ribbing, but they're not, intercut with the repeated phrase, all kidding aside, in between. And before it got too crazy, Isaac asked Malloy to take over, which he does, and of course succeeds at doing. And he's then asked to sing, which he does, and everybody all smiles. Ed and Kelly hold hands, and the episode ends, ending the season and possibly the entire series, which I really hope isn't the case. So, again, this was a good episode. There were funny moments. They wrapped up some of the threads that hadn't been wrapped up to that point. Really only one, the whole romance between Isaac and the doctor, which I never understood. The story about the lady from the planet that they visited before was also good, and it was yet another example of them revisiting a story from a previous episode, which I think was something good that they did this season. But again, it's stuff we've seen before. We've seen episodes where, of Star Trek, for example, where they had to explain to someone about the Prime Directive, whether it was one officer explaining it to another in Starfleet, or why they can't do XYZ on a planet, why they have to have a Prime Directive and so forth. We've seen it before. So, it was nothing to write home about. It was well acted, well written, but nothing mind-blowing. And again, they handle it in a very straightforward way where everything is spelled out in very like Dick and Jane terminology and dialogue. So it's like, really? Like, I don't know. I don't love it. I think the show is great. I like the characters. I like the visuals. I like the humor. I enjoy the show. I like the action sequences, but the morality play aspect of it just always comes off as weak to me. Like, I love the subject matter. I think they're tackling great subjects in these little morality play episodes, but it's nothing new, first of all, and it's handled very blandly, I think. So a lot of the time. Even like the more dramatic stuff was very to the point and just a little too direct. And I don't say that as someone who doesn't like to be hit over the head with a narrative, because I don't think they hit anybody over the head, but it was just handled too matter-of-factly, too dryly to me, like a lot of the time. So I don't know. I didn't think this season was great. I just enjoyed it a lot for different reasons. So hopefully it comes back. I'd like to see the show come back, because they did have some loose ends as well. The whole thing with the captain's daughter is left unresolved. It's a loose end. The whole thing with the spider alien people that said, "Oh, we'll be back." Well, they didn't come back. From the episode where the doctor's ex-husband shows up and turns into a spider guy. That species didn't come back. We thought for sure they would. They didn't deal with how Topa likes Gordon. That could be a really cool storyline, but they didn't deal with it. They just had that one thing where she mentions it, and that's it. So I think that's kind of a bummer. And, the crazy thing is that they didn't really introduce anything new. We dealt with the Kaylon, the Krill, and the Mocklins. And that's it. They had that one alien that, and even that wasn't new. The evolved form of that one alien from that planet that keeps winking in and out of existence, which tormented them for a whole episode with different scenarios. But nothing new. They didn't break any new ground. So that's kind of a letdown. So hopefully in season 4, hopefully they get a season 4, and hopefully they'll do that in season 4. Apparently the first 3 seasons are going to be available now on Disney Plus instead of Hulu. So who knows if a 4th season would even be on Hulu or on Disney Plus. So we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, that's what I thought of this episode. That's pretty much what I thought of the season. And I hope it comes back and I can do these reviews again for a season 4. I'm going to take off. I will be back. Until then, I wish you peace and long life.